When there's a problem, politicians can always blame the voters, which is what they're doing in Northern Ireland. The DUP are saying our voters don't like it. On Wednesday, there's going to be two major events in Parliament. Number one, Boris Johnson testifying before the Privileges Committee, and number two, a quick vote about the Northern Ireland Windsor framework, which will actually be a debate about the stormont break. It will be a very brief debate, not at all the level or standard of debate that the impact of this legislation demands. But there we are. Now, in the meantime, yesterday, the 12 officers of the DUP gathered together and having had lawyers pouring through the Windsor framework paperwork, have agreed to reject the framework. And this rejection, I'm sure, will be toughened by an ERG backlash against the framework by Wednesday, to judge from the pronouncements on GB News by Anne Widdecombe, that mouthpiece of the far right. However, the vast majority of Conservative MPs, as well as Labour, as well as the Liberal Party, will see that the Windsor framework goes through. That measure will pass Parliament, will pass through the Commons, whatever the objections may be, and whoever fails to vote in the Conservative Unionist ranks. So one ERG member apparently has said that any vote against the Windsor framework would be futile. It's time to bank the gains we've won since the 2019 Get Brexit Done Boris landslide. Meanwhile, if you look at the leader of the DUP, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, his rhetoric falls short of the open hostility that the 12 officers of the DUP would suggest exists. He says it's vital for Stormont to have democratic mechanisms that are effective in law. In other words, he's anticipating that Stormont will reassemble. That's not quite what we would expect from the action of the 12 officers of the DUP rejecting the Windsor framework in its entirety. So it's vital that Stormont will have democratic mechanisms that are effective in law to decide if new or amended laws can pass. And he says that the Windsor framework represents real progress. That's positive. But he says the break does not fix the fundamental issue, which is the imposition of European law by the Northern Ireland Protocol. He still wants more debate. He still wants what he calls clarification, change, and reworking. But I think the Westminster Parliament, particularly the Conservatives in the Westminster Parliament, the government, I think the government is tired of any further debate over this issue. I think it's sticking its heels in the ground and it will not budge now. So if Stormont doesn't reassemble, there will be an election in Northern Ireland, and I suspect the government has decided that it will carry on whether Stormont assembles or not. If it doesn't assemble after the next election, there will be a period of time while it's waiting to assemble, and probably by the end of that time, we will be into a new general election. So it is possible that between now and the next general election, there will be no Stormont assembly. That would be a great sadness and a great dereliction of democratic duty by the government, by the DUP. And I think, frankly, anybody who is elected to Stormont and fails to sit in the Stormont Assembly should surrender their pay packet. It's simply not right to be elected and then not to sit. Somebody must represent the people who have signed the form. That's how an election works.